Hey there, my name is Graham. In this video, I'm going to show you how to put your invoice process on autopilot. We've helped dozens of businesses automate their invoicing processes and other core processes so that they can focus on what matters for their business. And what we've seen over 5+ years is that a lot of people spend way too much time manually entering in data, or they rush through it really quick and end up having to resend some invoice, and that is a pain for everybody involved. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to build a system that you can trust. And by the end, you'll have even more time back in your pocket. Let's get into it. Just to make sure that we are anchoring our automation in a positive business outcome, we like to use this framework before we automate anything. It's really easy, 3 steps. First, we want to blank your goal. When we blank your trigger or workflow. And finally, all of this is so we can blank the positive business outcome. The good news is we are 2/3 of the way there. We know we want to automate our invoicing process. Why? So that we can be more accurate, so that we have more time, so that we can focus on building our team or interfacing with clients or reading or content creating, you name it. The only question left is when. And that leads us to the very first step in our workflow, our trigger. There are 4 things that might start a workflow like this. I'm going to go through each one in depth in just a second, but before we continue, we need to make sure that all of our data is in one single place, also known as a single source of truth. So if your data is scattered across different Google Sheets or spreadsheets, maybe it's in different project management platforms, this is a good time to bring it all together. In this example, I'm going to use Airtable as our single source of truth and Peak Roofing as our test company. The main thing that you need to keep in mind is to make sure that the single source of truth has all of the data necessary for an invoice. And what I mean by that is each line item, a description, a title, a unit price, a total price. These are all things that will come into play in just a second. So Airtable is our database. Now let's think about automation tools. We have Zapier, Make, Innate. For this video, I'm going to be using Make. You'll be invited to create a trigger. Now this goes back to the 4 options that we saw earlier. First, there's a webhook. This is an external platform pushing a signal to Make or that first module. A mailhook is the exact same thing. It's just an email that triggers the rest of the workflow. A schedule or a poll checks on a regular basis, and then manual/instant is when you go into Make and trigger it yourself. In this example, we will use a webhook because we are using Airtable, and Airtable can pass a signal onto Make to start the rest of this workflow. In this case, I will call it invoice automation. This address is extremely important, and save. Okay, so our signal is set. You might be asking, what is this? And how do I configure Airtable to send a signal to Make? Well, it all has to do with this URL right here. Let's go back over to Airtable really quick. Remember how I said that Airtable, or your single source of truth, needs to have all the information for your invoice? This is where it comes in handy. Peak Roofing has an agreements table. And in this agreements table, it has all of the information necessary to create an invoice in QuickBooks, our invoicing software. So this is different from service types or clients or invoice line items. We need to be in the table that has the right information. So here we are in agreements, and I'm going to create a button. This is a simple way to do it. There are other ways to do it, but I'm going to create a button that can be called a trigger button perhaps, and it's going to open a URL. This URL is going to be the same URL that we saw in Make. It is associated with that webhook. I copied the webhook to my clipboard, pasted it here, and I just need to do a little bit of formatting. I can put it in quotations, but it's not quite there yet. In order to get the right data from this table, specifically the record, we need to pass the record ID to Make. This will then be the cornerstone for the rest of the automation. Quick crash course in URL structure. I'm just going to put question mark record ID equals and sign, and then map the record ID here, close the parentheses, and this, you'll notice the preview, gives the webhook the necessary information associated with that record ID. Let's go test it in Make. So I'm going to go over to Make, There it is, passing the record ID. Now, moving forward, we need to go into Airtable and we will get a record. What record are we going to get? The one that we just mapped to the webhook. Searching for Peak Roofing Property Management, we are invited then to reference the table. For this, we will do agreements, and then we're invited to give the record ID, which is already present from the webhook. Now we're starting to get going. Let's see what this module brings. We can test this one single module by pasting the record ID in, and it gives all of the data that is associated with that agreement record, all of the data necessary for our invoice. Now, this is the cornerstone for the rest of the make workflow. But if I were to go module by module, mapping each field, it would be a much longer video. So I'm going to show you an overview, go through each step. But before I show you the overall workflow, I have two things to call out. First has to do with clients or customers. The second has to do with service types or products, invoice line items, whatever you want to call them. Because this workflow is pulling from our single source of truth, there is a chance that your service type does not yet exist in QuickBooks. So whenever you try to map it, it errors. Now, this is really important. You need to plan ahead, just in case your single source of truth does not yet line up with QuickBooks. The whole point of a single source of truth is that it's single, and you don't need to go into multiple sources of truth to edit things. If a service or a product exists in Airtable, it should then automatically be created in QuickBooks instead of having to do double data entry. That's what this workflow accounts for. If the client doesn't exist, it creates it. If the service or product doesn't exist, it creates it. If it does exist in QuickBooks, it selects it. Now that that's out of the way, you're prepared to see this overall workflow. You start with your trigger. Then you get the information necessary in the agreement. Then you search for the client. Does the client exist? If yes, then we're going to start going through those line items. An agreement probably has more than one service or more than one product. So we're going to loop through them. And then we're going to get the line item details. We're going to search for existing items. Does the line item, product, service exist? Yes or no? If yes, go ahead and create that invoice. If no, we're going to create the new line items and then create the invoice. Let's go back. If the client does not exist, you guessed it, we're going to create a new client based on the client details in our single source of truth. Then we're going to start looping through each line item because our invoice in this case has more than one. We're going to search for the details, and if it exists, then we go ahead and create that invoice. If it does not exist, we have to go create each new line item and then create that invoice. So I hope that those architectural questions up front help make sense of the complexity or the different branches of this scenario. Now it's time to test our workflow. We'll go through two different scenarios. The first scenario is this. Peak Roofing has a repeat client they trust that they're going to try a new service on. So they need to create a new service in QuickBooks whenever they invoice them. The second scenario is a new client that they don't want to risk anything on, so they use their flagship service. It exists in QuickBooks and it creates the invoice automatically whenever it's time. Let's dive into the first scenario. Perfect. You saw the path go and recognized that the client exists already. It looped through each line item and recognized that the line item did not yet exist, so it created it again in QuickBooks. And then it proceeded to create the QuickBooks invoice. Let's go over to QuickBooks to see how that turned out. So here I am in QuickBooks Invoices, and let's see at the bottom here, I have Elm Drive Apartments. I can view/edit this invoice and see that there's the new installation maintenance program. It did not exist yet, and then it was created in QuickBooks and everything is loaded appropriately. All I have to do as the business owner is make sure everything looks right and review and send in this scenario. We don't have this sending automatically, which is a good first step, a good human in the loop as things get up and going. Now for the second scenario, remember it's a brand new client. We don't want to risk anything, so we're going to give the flagship service. So I created a new client for this. It's an HOA that does not exist in QuickBooks yet. The residential roof inspection does exist. Let's try it out. Okay, so there we go. We went through and found that the client does not exist. Then we saw that the product did exist, so we created the invoice. Let's go check out QuickBooks. At the very bottom, I see Birchwood Estates HOA. Clicking into the invoice, brand new client, did not exist before, same old service. Review and send. So let's recap really quick. I know that was a lot. What we just built. Well, we started with a why before we touched any tool. That was our automation framework. What we want to do, when we want it to happen, and the positive business outcome. Then we identified a single source of truth so that our data isn't in different places and everything we need to create one invoice is in one place. Then we talked through the architectural changes, the client and service slash product creation, resulting in different branching logic, and we tested different scenarios to make sure they work. In the end, we have a fully automated workflow in Make so that you don't have to go in and out of QuickBooks to create customers or products or services. You can just operate out of one single source of truth, trigger that invoice, review it, and send it. If you have any questions about the logic in this workflow or tools to use, don't hesitate to reach out. And if you're serious about transforming your business with AI and automation, you should check out our video on the things you need to know before creating a custom app of any sort. It is a must watch before you start introducing more automation, more AI, more custom development into your business to make sure that you're not just doing things ad hoc, but you are truly elevating your business and your revenue to be transformationally different than it was before. Thanks for watching and good luck building.